Hey class, so this week's topic is logo design. I have a little lecture to share with you and then I will go over some essentials for the assignment this week. I'm going to start by screen sharing with you. And I will start my PowerPoint. This isn't the most beautiful PowerPoint, but the content in it is great. So, logo design. Logo design is something that not a lot of people fully understand. Everybody thinks they need one, but not very many people can actually tell you what a logo actually is. So, what is a logo? Immediately recognizable, it conveys a message inspiring trust, admiration, loyalty, etc. So that means there's an emotional aspect to it. The logo is one aspect of a company's commercial brand or economic entity. Shapes, colors, fonts, and images. So at the very basic explanation of a logo, it's comprised of shapes, colors, fonts, and images that make up what that logo actually consists of. And then logos are used to identify. So it's a combination of an emotional connection and an idea and an overall feeling about a brand, but it's also made up of just basic shapes and colors and has an essential structure to it. So this is a great quote I like by Paul Rand. A logo is a flag, a signature, and I always get hung up on this word, escutcheon is how you say it, which just essentially means a shield or like an emblem, a street sign. A logo does not sell directly, it identifies. A logo is rarely a description of a business. A logo derives meaning from the quality of the thing it symbolizes, not the other way around. So this is really important to understand. A logo is less important than the product it signifies. What it represents is more important than what it looks like. The subject matter of a logo can be almost anything. So a logo doesn't have to be literal. It will begin to derive its meaning from all the other components that make up that brand, but you still need something to be that flagship, that identifying symbol for the overall brand that you're creating. What makes a good logo? A good logo is distinctive, appropriate, practical, graphic, and simple in form, and it conveys the owner's intended message. A logo should be able to be printed at any size and in most cases be effective without color. A great logo essentially boils down to two things, great concept and great execution. So it is very common and a practice that I still participate in that your logo should work in full color and black and white. With the digital age kind of changing how we all do business and where logos are being used most often, you will see logos used with gradients and shadows and things like that. But it should definitely also have a very simplified version that could just be done in one solid color and still be readable and legible and connect to the overall identity. 5 principles of effective logo design: simple, memorable, timeless, versatile, and appropriate. So simple is one of the hardest aspects of logo design. The simpler you get, the harder I think it is to come up with that great idea. Memorable, you will see brands that you just know instantly with one mark what that is. Timeless, these logos do tend to stand the test of time more when they have that simple, memorable aspect to it. Versatile and appropriate. So we'll go over these in detail. Simple. Simplicity makes a logo design easily recognizable, versatile, and memorable. Good logos feature something unexpected or unique without being overdrawn. This is very hard to do. It's much easier to do a logo that has everything in the kitchen sink than something that is as simple as the Nike swoosh. This is probably the most well-known simple logo, one mark, and you know exactly what this business is. This is very hard to accomplish. It's much, I wouldn't say easier, but if somebody tells you, okay, I have a business and I do this, this, and this, and I want to include symbols of all of these things, and you're putting it in there, it's very hard to make that look clean and effective. It is possible, but to come up with something like this and just have this single mark carry so much weight of that brand is a great accomplishment. So, memorable. Following closely on this principle of simplicity is that of memorability. An effective logo design should be memorable, which is achieved by keeping it simple yet appropriate. McDonald's. It's been around for a long time. The McDonald's arch is a very well-known symbol, so I like to use this for that example. You see those arches and you know that that is McDonald's. Let's see, timeless. An effective logo should be timeless. Will yours stand the test of time? Will it still be effective in 10, 20, or 50 years? So you see a lot of brands do refreshes, and this is because they originally came out with a logo that didn't stand the test of time. They realized it got dated or it wasn't effectively used on different platforms and across mediums. So they had to adapt it over the years. And the London Underground is my example for this because it is a very old logo that is still used and around today, and it's recognizable and it's simple. So I will have to go back and add some refreshes into this so you guys can see how certain businesses have updated their logos over time. I typically see this among businesses that are just, around the 10-year mark, where in that decade they realize what they started with isn't what is fitting their customers. I just noticed I have the HelloFresh app on my phone, if you guys know that company. And just last week, I noticed the icon was updated to a new logo, and I thought that was really interesting. So things like McDonald's, they have used this logo in several different ways, but the bones of this logo are the same. Sometimes it's just the arch. They'll break up the text and move it under. In this example, it's going through the arches, but you know what those golden arches are for McDonald's. Versatile. An effective logo works across a variety of media and applications. For this reason, logos should be designed in vector format to ensure that they scale to any size. Ask yourself, is your logo still effective if it is printed in one color? In reverse, reverse means that it's a dark background with a light logo on top. One color is typically black. The size of a postage stamp. So if your logo is tiny, can you still recognize it? Think of the Nike swoosh. Yes, to all of these. I'm going to take a break and wait for this phone. Okay, sorry about the phone. I'm going to restart here. So these are the ways your logo should be effective. The size of a postage stamp. If you look at that Nike swoosh, it can get really tiny and you still know it's Nike. Or it could get as big as a billboard and you still know it's Nike. Not every logo has to be that simple. It's just a really good example of brand recognition. But you should think about how your logo will be used in different applications. And, if not, you might get down the road and need a refresh. But think about these things as you're designing. It's important to know your end usage of your logo when you start the logo. This is a good example of simplicity. I really like the way this one is comprised of simple shapes, and it's all broken down. And this is also a good example. Oops, it's not yet. I'll break down this panda in a minute with another design principle here. We'll start with appropriate and relevant. How you position the logo should be appropriate for its intended audience. A great logo should be relevant to your practice. It has to have meaning that relates to the work you are doing. So not every logo is appropriate for every business. It just depends on who your audience is. For example, Toys R Us. They are no longer with us as a business, but it is a great example of targeting their demographic, their target audience. It's playful, it's fun, it's still simple enough to be broken down into one color and small and large when needed, but they are targeting a certain demographic. A logo like this wouldn't be appropriate for, say, a financial business or other things that need more seriousness and relate different emotions. But for Toys R Us, this is super appropriate for the audience and it's fun. And this one has even taken some shape shifts over the years and refreshes. But this is one of their last versions before they closed, and it is super appropriate for their audience. And then they have that unique aspect of always turning the R around. So Gestalt. This is a principle of design that I want you guys to know. It's an organized, so what it means is breaking down the parts. So you can see here that it's pieces broken up, but then they're worked together to see one cohesive shape. So organized as a whole that is perceived as more than the sum of its parts. The central principle of Gestalt psychology is that the mind forms a global whole while self-organizing tendencies. Let's take a pause here for a minute. Okay, so picking back up, you can see here that it has the shapes of the panda and they don't have any meaning to them. It's just basic shapes, but you put them together and you see them as a whole, and it's very clearly a panda. So logos do this automatically. You see them as a whole, and they, in your mind, automatically forms that meaning and organizes them as a whole piece. Okay, so when designing a logo, consider negative space, maximizing details, creative, clever solutions, variable logo designs, purposeful color, personality, and style. So negative space, you can see in this panda, again, it's a good example. The head is not actually its own shape, it's the negative space creating that. And then think about creative, clever solutions. What can you do that's interesting and fun? A good idea is always a better logo than something that's super literal necessarily. So there's all different ways you're going to be using logos, and they'll be appropriate for different uses. So think about your end goal, and if there's something clever and fun you can do, always give that a try. The only mandate in logo design is that it be distinctive, memorable, and clear. So I want you guys to remember this. So in other words, logos can look like whatever they want to look like. You can make them however you want, as long as you're following some basic good design principles, and then the overall brand will attach that meaning to a logo. Okay, so that is the end of my PowerPoint. I'm going to hop over here to the assignment for a second. And what you guys are going to be doing this week is taking your assignments from last week where you practiced simplification and actually turning those into a logo. So you're going to begin with the most detailed concept. If I hop over here, you're going to be creating, I used my dog image for this as a sample, the most detailed concept, and you're going to break that down until you have a super simple logo, and then you're going to be creating 4 different logos, each increasing in simplicity as you go along. So you'll begin with the most detailed concept. You're only going to be picking one of your images to base this logo off of. You get to pick the company name and the typography, and you can attach your own meaning to it. So after your logo designs are complete, you'll be submitting them in a presentation. So that means you have to use Illustrator and InDesign in this assignment. So what you're doing is going from something like this. This is what we did last week. We had this photograph, and we learned to simplify it into things that looked more like this. And you'll see here that what that simplification assignment should have had you guys get in your head is that this has a few basic shapes. This Boston Terrier, I like to use it because it has such distinctive markings, and it's really easy to simplify and break down. So you'll notice here the nose and the eye shapes and the ears. And you could use a whole dog like I did here in my first logo. And then I broke it down. I took it out of the background. I just used the head until it became this super simple version of the dog. And you'll see here that in each version, you still read it as a Boston Terrier and a dog logo. It just gets simpler and simpler each time. So you can carry over the same shapes as you simplify, or you can redraw each logo in a more simple way. That choice is up to you. If you did something like a person like this, like Beyonce, I want you guys to consider taking parts of this. Like maybe you could decide it was for a cosmetic company or something like that, and you could just use like the face in the logo, and then maybe you have one that's just lips, and maybe you have one that's just eyes. So you can be clever about how you break down your original image into simplifying it for logo design, but that is the basic elements of what you're doing. So I want you guys to start looking at these photographs. Again, you only have to pick one, and thinking about how you would actually convert that to a vector logo. And again, you are going to be doing your logos in Illustrator, so it should be vector. See how these are drawn pieces. Do not do them in Photoshop. No logo creation in Photoshop. I'm just showing you this from our last assignment to show you where the mind frame comes from and how you should be thinking about this assignment as a whole, from a photograph reference to a simplified version, and then you're going to take that a step further and work on your simplification. And you should have done your sketches in the last assignment, so that should really help you with this portion. So That is the assignment for the week. Good luck. As always, let me know if you have questions, and I can't wait to see your first try at logo design. Thanks.